I represent Ukrainian Public Association of Animal Advocates, and my experience is protecting and rescuing wild animals. I also deal with legal issues. I would like to show you from the very beginning the conditions some animals are kept in, and later I will explain why it is like that in Ukraine. This is Pokrovsk in Donetsk region. Here you see the bears, and this is the zoo called the Pokrov Period Park, and we paid our attention to the zoo as far back as 2019. Here you can see videos from local TV. You see the conditions the animals are kept. And what was the most surprising for me, that this so-called zoo invited children to go on excursions. So it's in Donetsk region. And our people, unfortunately, consider that it's okay, and they even bring their kids to see the animals, and they consider it to be a positive experience for children. This lion is blind, and actually it died. We were trying to take away these children because it was already winter. It was the end of November, then December, January, and only at the end of February we managed to take away the animals. So we actually took them in batches, and we didn't manage to save all the animals. This lion died there, another lion died already when we took it away, and several animals just disappeared. And later we shall be talking why it happened like this. This is bear called Vova. It was kept in one of the restaurants in Kamenets-Podilsky. And again, the animal liked this bear, and we wanted to take this bear away to Domazhir Bear Rehabilitation Center, and the owner did not agree, and it was a very influential person in the region. We had to file a complaint to court, and this is the same animal in Domazhir. And actually it happened when the war broke out and his restaurant actually was on fire, but the animal was okay, and only then we managed to persuade the owner to give us this bear. And the owner actually told, well, I like the bear, it's okay, he has good conditions. And it's really difficult to persuade people what is normal and how the animals should live. Here we have one more bear called Bolik. Again, we rescued him from Chernivtsi during the war. You see on the left the conditions he was in, and this is Romania, where he was brought. And again, the animal thought it was okay. He also had another open area. And again, he left at one of the restaurants, and they liked him a lot. But still, they agreed that we should take him away. Here you see a circus monkey, Thomas. The owner died at the beginning of the war. And you see our colleagues from Sumy. They managed to take Thomas. This is one of the species of animals, and he lived for several months until we managed to buy a special box for transportation. And here you see Thomas in Spain. You see how he looks. And here you see another story. It was as far back as 2021, Yasnohorodka ostrich farm, and they used animals for photo business. They were making money, and there were lots of kids coming there. There were also bears, and it was okay. The mothers gave these animals to the kids, and you see what condition, what physical condition these these lion cubs are in. They actually were injured because they were not fed properly, they were not kept in good condition, they were already afraid of people. And this is the result of being used for this photo business. But again, our people like this type of amusement. And the final thing I would like to show you, this is the video taken 1 month ago. We cooperated with cyber police. This is just an apartment in Kyiv. And when the police came there, they actually took these animals and they gave these animals to Kyiv Zoo for temporary stay. There were lots of animals there, and we knew that there are such flats, but we understand that we do not count on the support of the police, because either they close their eyes or they are interested in keeping it as a secret. It was illegal trade of wild animals. They had a website in the net and they were selling different species of animals. So they actually took the animals from illegal breeders and later sold them. Thank you. This is everything with my video presentation. Do you see me now? So this is the end of my video presentation. And now I would like to provide some explanation why things like this may happen in Ukraine. So shall I continue? So I want us to understand why things like that may happen in Ukraine. Probably in European countries, the animals cannot be kept under such conditions. The animals cannot be exploited. The animals cannot be used to earn money. I think we can save the animals, but definitely not all of them. So why is it like that? We have certain government institutions, and the public is actually doing a lot, but we cannot resolve all the problems, because without official institutions, we cannot do it alone. And it is necessary actually for the government to deal with issues as well. Our Ministry for Environment is responsible for policy design in relation to protection of wild animals. So the policy is there, and actually it is the ministry that is responsible for the documents and all the official things. After the scandal with Pokrovsk Zoo, we managed to amend the regulations about the conditions the animals are kept in. And actually, people have to follow this procedure. For example, it was offered, it is actually written and approved by the Ministry of Justice, that the people who keep animals should submit the data regarding the animals to the environmental inspection, somehow to register this animal. And it has never been the case that the animal keepers actually were doing this, apart from official zoos. So it means that any person in Ukraine can have some animals, call it rehabilitation center, call it a zoo, and nobody is actually controlling this. So you can take an elephant and nobody will even ask you on what for and what other conditions the animal is there. It's only we as the public that can raise this issue. We do not know, for example, how many animals all over we have in Ukraine, how these animals are kept. The notion zoo is used according to the legislation, and we have the so-called national zoos, which are supposed to be in the special reserve areas. There are about 10 official zoos, which are big, and everything is fine there. All the other zoos do not have official status of a zoo, because again, it is not written in the law. And therefore, people do not follow the requirements for the zoos. For example, they do not submit any data about animal reproduction. There is no ban on animal trade over the net. So there are lots of issues that are still left without the not in the focus of the official bodies. And still, we do have the Ministry for Environment that is responsible for all these policies and all these aspects. Well, we try to cooperate with them. We help them. The public definitely should participate in the policy development, but we cannot replace the official institutions, even if we want to, in the area of policy development. I also would like to mention the issue of checks and inspections. This is done by environmental checks and inspections. We have the complaints of the public, and then we have to address the complaint. Not all people some people understand that animals cannot be kept, for example, close to the restaurant, and then therefore they, for example, raise our attention. And last year we did a number of checks in order to understand how this environmental inspection in Ukraine operates. I'm talking about its territorial units, because we actually wanted to see how they managed to positively resolve the situation, either to take away from a bad owner or to improve the conditions of the animals, etc. So there were about 10 inspections and checks like this, and we were trying to analyze why it is impossible to achieve these results. So our conclusions are the following. One, the environmental inspections write their protocols. They do it in such a way that they are dismissed by the court because they are not done in the way they were supposed to be done. There are mistakes, or the data are not complete, or in general, the protocol is not done properly. And as a result, the court does not consider this case. And sometimes even the owner can influence the decision of the court. For example, this bear, Vova, that was kept at one of the restaurants. In our legislation, it is written that animals cannot be kept in the restaurants, in the special recreation centers, but somehow the court dismissed this case, stating that this requirement is about the animals that are used in special like performance or amusement institutions, and restaurant is not in this category, therefore everything is fine. And in the laws, Sometimes we do have good requirements and norms, but the punishments or the fines are not mentioned in the administrative code, and therefore it is impossible to bring the owner to liability. So this is another problem. Another issue I would like to mention, this is when animals go abroad. So now this is war, and the procedure has been simplified. For example, now there is no need to get a special type of documents. One certain species of animals should get special documents for going abroad. Now the procedure has been simplified. So what are the difficulties? The animals, when they go abroad, they should have a chip. And when we, for example, took those bears from Pokrovsk Zoo into our rehabilitation center Sinevir, there was a vet there, and we asked him to read the information from the chips. According to the documents, these were circus animals. So everything was scanned, and I'm talking about 5 bears. So 3 bears were scanned actually, and only one animal met the data according to the documents, and one chip was not mentioned at all. So at that time, we asked our doctor, who is a specialist regarding identification of animals and who is an expert in using animal IT info base, and we asked him to look through these databases, including European ones. So the chip was not registered in any database. So if you take the information from the chip, you understand that it was chipped in Kharkiv and the address of the vet. Nothing else was mentioned, neither owner nor the place. And then nobody actually checks whether the chip is fine, whether it is present in the base. Everything is just on paper, and at the customs control or border control, there are no deep checks, and therefore it means we do not have electronic database to identify animals. I'm talking about official identification database registered by the state, and it is not even mentioned in the law on identification of wild animals and pet animals, companion animals. There is only such database. This database is available only for farm animals. So we actually were trying to initiate this issue. We engaged a number of experts, and so far we didn't manage to do it. Then the war broke out, and we would like to address our partners from the European Union for them to know that this is the challenge we face in Ukraine, and we do need some assistance with identification. And again, we do not have an official mention of cities in our laws. So we would like somehow to finalize this challenge and to resolve this challenge in a way it is done in some other countries. When we take the animals now, CITES documents are not required at the border, but when you cross the border, they actually check the registration of the chip in electronic databases.
Тільки під час війни. І зараз тварина так, вона So now the animal is registered somewhere in the ID base, or this is the base which could be used in Europe as well, or in some European database. We are facing serious problems with the state inspection because our partners, EPL, have developed their own new draft law to set certain requirements, updated requirements, uh, in order to follow the European norms. But the draft law was developed, it was voted in the first reading, but then war came and there was no second reading of this draft law. But this is a really serious problem of inspection, so we hope very much that soon the draft law will be really adopted and the state inspection will start operating, because you have seen the examples that is actually the consequence of inefficiency of operation of our state authorities. And actually, that is just a matter of arbitrary will. Nobody is controlling anything. You can, well, it's very difficult to somehow liquidate these consequences. We will see what will happen to these animals now. And to conclude, let me mention that some of you mentioned cruel treatment, and we provide consultations in Ukraine in relation to cruel treatment of animals. We have a special organization, and we have a lawyer who cooperates with us from time to time. He has huge experience in this field, so he's been providing assistance. The assistant means at least some consultations on what you can do with this cruel treatment of animals. And actually, I can tell you what issues people tend to raise now. Uh, Nobody is protected. Nobody knows where to file an application related to this cruel treatment of animals. So, as a conclusion, I would like to say that we are going to work further on, and we hope very much that this will really improve the whole situation. Thank you, Maria, for your presentation, a very interesting presentation. We've got several questions to you. So the first question is related to the case in Pokrovsk you mentioned. So the media wrote that this man who owned the zoo was also involved in child cruelty. Is it true? Did it turn out to be true? Yes, it's true. Well, this was a person after a grave disease. I don't know any details, but that is a person after some severe disease, and I cannot actually accuse him because most probably he really had some disorder. But that is the problem of the state, because you can see what is happening and you need to take some action. He was a guardian of about 10 people, 10 children, and there were some accidents of child cruelty. And when we were investigating into this case of the zoo, local authorities turned out to take his side, and the state inspection wrote a kind of a certificate in the format it should. It was submitted to the court, but the court just closed the case. And then we had to really exercise a lot of public pressure to launch this civil proceedings in this case. It was so difficult, you cannot even imagine. So I think that this is the merit of the state responsibility, because everybody saw what was happening, and this child cruelty was witnessed by a lot of people because that was happening in the apartment, in his house. But we could not provide any help. We could not do anything about this case. But the children after that were taken away from him, luckily. that was settled in the same period as we settled our case with the zoo. Thank you for your answer. And there is one more question. You have mentioned the internet trade in wild animals. So do you happen to know if illegal activity in Ukraine like this has any impact on other countries? I mean, whether international trade is also there. Well, I think yes. Why not? If somebody is selling, so there should be someone who buys. We probably don't have enough information on that. In Boryspil, for example, some trafficking was detained, some boxes with animals staying in awful conditions in those boxes, squeezed all together there. So there have been some cases when the trafficking was stopped. You know, you can actually take these things, these boxes, across the border having no permissions. This is my cat, by the way. So I would also like to say that now the state is submitting a draft law on canceling of permissions. We've got permissions enshrined in the law. I mean, the need for permissions. This was done in 2006, and it was written that there is a requirement. Suppose that the people who are having a wild animal in their home need to get a permission. This innovation was introduced in 2006, but this didn't happen any single time because the ministry has not even developed a procedure for this to happen, for issuing those permissions. We have the law, but we don't have the bylaws which would ensure the implementation of this procedure. Am I here? Am I still with you? Yes. Everything is fine. You can hear me. Yeah, I hope so. Good. And you can see it because my cat has done something to my computer. So was not sure that you can hear and see me. So it appears that they want to cancel these permissions, and they are also canceling everything. And it so happens that instead of developing this enforcement procedure or to suggest some new mechanism, some new procedure, maybe this is an outdated norm, but to suggest something, to offer something new. So instead of this, they're just canceling those permissions prescribed by the law, permission for breeding of the Red Book animals, which, by the way, also didn't work any single day. And if we speak about permission for wild animals, so they are also canceling this. They don't want to issue those certificates for old animals because which is true. This is true. You can have some fish and probably you don't need any permission for this. But instead of introducing some positive changes and bring some order, some control into this field, they are just canceling. What about red book animals? Only Ukrainian species like bear could be considered to be red book animals, while all the other ones do not fall under this definition. So maybe they could at least deal with these species and their breeding. But again, we don't have any procedures for that. And since there is total lack of control, so we are facing problems. So let me stress once again that the public is working, organizations are working, but if the state is not fulfilling its functions, so this means that we will not be able to reach any significant results. And even if we speak about dogs, because there are a lot of people dealing with dogs here, there is no special state authority that would be responsible for the development of the policy of protecting dogs, cats, and pets. against cruel treatment. We don't have any body that would be exercising control over their protection against cruel treatment. We do have something in the legislation in relation to the Ministry of Environment, but this is not a clear mandate, and they are dealing just with the wild animals. So I think that it would be right if this mandate was handed over from the Ministry of Environment to some state authorities dealing with specifically with animals. Otherwise, nobody will be responsible. Thank you. And here is the last question: where do you happen to know whether we have in Ukraine any programs to help horses? Because a lot of horses have been evacuated from combat areas. So do we have any programs in place for horses accommodation and rehabilitation? Well, there is also a pain in the neck. I haven't heard about any programs like this related to horses. I'm just trying to help whenever I can, but that is because I just cannot be watching what we have, what we are facing in the countries. This is a real problem. So much time has passed. We have been working so much time for such a long period of time over the legislation, developing the legislation, asking to develop legislation, but we don't get anything. The public doesn't get anything. So I have told you about wild animals. And I think that a lot more could be said about even wild animals. So as far as pets are concerned, I think the situation is the same, and horses, the situation is the same. But we are not going in depth. We are just covering some main issues. We have saved one animal, great, but we need to establish a consistent policy in order to settle the problem from the inside and to help not just one animal, but all animals, because we can help. I mean, the public can help one specific animal, but we need to apply a consistent policy of animal protection. And anything that is happening in our country is happening just under the pressure of the public, but it should be happening on the initiative of the state, because the state can really do this. We should not be imploring and asking. We need to convey the message to the authorities and to demand something from the authorities.